Hey guys, this is Casey with Chifa Entertainment, another episode for Rich Soil Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. We have another guest today that's in the cannabis industry and is quite they're doing quite something I think is different and something that you guys will find a lot of value in. And so welcome Rico and James, co-founder of Emerald Market. You guys are creators of Cannabis and Movie Club out here in SoCal. I myself have been to a couple of them, so I want to thank you for all the work that you guys do for the community. I know many of us enjoy going to that. Just being able to, one, the place that you guys do it at is kind of unbeatable. I mean, you get a rooftop in LA. Tell us more, a little bit about that, a little bit maybe how you guys started that, or maybe just how you guys started with cannabis.
Sure. Well, I'll get started a little bit about me and kind of how I got into it. So I've been in sales and marketing for over 15 years, and I was originally I was working director of sales at a small boutique digital marketing agency, and I was tasked with looking at emerging markets. And so I found cannabis industry as one of those emerging markets. This was 2017, 2018 timeline. And so James had been in the industry, and I'll let James kind of tell his side of or his story and how he got into cannabis. But through my networking, through my connections and all that, trying to open up this new market, that's how I met James. And getting into that, I saw really quickly that the cannabis marketing scene was just very haphazard, very all over the place. It didn't have a lot of the traditional strategies and tactics that we were using in the digital marketing scene. And so in getting into the industry, I just saw a lot of people struggling to try to figure it out. There was a lot of compliance, legal, just a lot that came to that. So I really started to fall in love with trying to help figure out the marketing space in cannabis. And James, again, had already been running some networking stuff. He had been in cannabis for a little while. So we both kind of connected on that. The founder of the digital marketing agency I was working with didn't really want to continue down the path of cannabis and didn't see the value the way that I did in helping to elevate the marketing scene. So we went our separate ways, and I went with James and I said, hey, we need to create something that can really be this resource. We really started kind of putting our minds together to figure out how we could help to solve some of these problems in the marketing scene of cannabis. And so that's really where Emerald Market kind of came out of, was we've seen these problems and these solutions. James was running a networking group that people kept coming up with the same kind of problems around marketing. And really, more than anything, was finding it. They couldn't find the resources they needed. They didn't know how to get to it. And so we created Emerald Market to try to be that central marketplace for brands to find the resources they need, whether that be, event-based marketing, whether that was like magazine marketing or print marketing, OTT. We kind of wanted to bring the breadth to cannabis. At this time, this was right around COVID 2020 when that kicked off. And so it kind of put everything on pause for a little
Yeah.
bit.
Fun stuff. Yep.
So we went back to the cannabis industry and really started to figure out what is it that they want to do. And it came down to experience. Cannabis is an experiential product. It's something that people need to try it, really. That's how they get that engagement of it. So we really started focusing on the event space and how we could continue to integrate the event space into all the other marketing campaigns and strategies. And so that's really where we kind of came around with cannabis and movies. We were really focusing on events, but we wanted to create events that were interest driven. They weren't really focused on cannabis. So if you look at, for example, like alcohol, like beer, for example, it's everywhere. The reason it's normalized, the reason it's destigmatized is because it's at the baseball game, it's at the movies, it's everywhere. Whether it's not about the
Yep.
beer being there, it's
My
about
my
whatever.
stepson's football games. Absolutely.
Exactly. It's everywhere. And so that's really what we wanted to do with cannabis. We wanted to start to normalize and destigmatize this industry. And that really meant bringing cannabis to what I like to call as interest driven events. So
Yeah.
things around movies or concerts or comedy, and then bring cannabis there. So bring it to the community. That's really what we tried. And that was kind of the birth of cannabis and movies. It's focused on movies, and it happens to have cannabis involved. And so we get about 3 to 5 cannabis brands to come out. Well, before I jump into that, let me kind of get into and tell James's
Don't give
story.
us all the juice yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, James. Jump in.
So I've been in the cannabis space since like 2014, maybe 2015. I funded a dispensary, and in that period of time in Los Angeles, it was really the Wild West.
I was gonna
License
say. Yeah.
Licensing
Imagine.
hadn't come yet, so we were running on sort of this limited immunity thing that was in LA from Prop 215. So it was very much the Wild West. I realized when I did the dispensary that I didn't really know anything about cannabis other than like my high school experience. So, anyways, I dove deep in there. I started a meetup group to help startups, and we became this gigantic meetup group. We were the biggest in the country. We served over 10,000 people and 1,000 businesses, and lots of startups came through. But really, what it was a place for community to start developing. That's where I started to see the sort of richness of developing cannabis communities. That's where it started. And it was awesome. We did it every month for over 5 years, and it was killer. And it was during the time where LA transitioned from the Prop 215 era into the license space. So you saw all the deals at the same time. So for me, being like a deal guy, an entrepreneur, was amazing for me because I saw the trends in finance and trends in real estate, the trends in products, the trends in just everything was changing shape all the time. And it was like having a lens into seeing it. And so that was sort of the basis of like my community building, background in cannabis. And then when Rico and I met from one of these like networking things that we were kind of involved in, really the game that I saw was that brands were struggling to find their consumers, and the market was so moving under their feet all the time. Like, how do you make these decisions? This is an area that we really wanted to focus on, really to examine the experience where brands are trying to find these people. These people are either interested or curious, and there's this sort of gap in between that, which is the event. And the event can be a lot of things, but that's where we have been hyper focused on understanding the experience where somebody is going to be comfortable enough to either try something new or come to something that they feel comfortable with their friends. Like that space is where we specialize. And so we have developed a lot of products for that space, particularly for brands, so that the brands can go into that space powerfully, knowing how to engage, how to approach that space, and then how to capture data and customers ultimately so they can have them for long term. That's really kind of what we do today.
Yeah, I think it gives me myself when I went to the event an opportunity to also educate people who were like you said, kind of curious, maybe the ones that have never dabbed before. You guys had quite it was just so diverse. You had the boomers there, you had people that were in their younger 20s, you had people like myself who were moms. The one I went to personally that I remember the most is the one where we had the NorCal women come down. You guys were highlighting the women farmers. So those are things that we appreciate when you guys are organizing events, especially if you guys are men. You guys get a lot of heat being that it's a male dominated industry. So the way you guys support women and especially small farmers like the two that you guys had out there, I think it was Wildlands and Arcana. Weed, moms do weed. I think Noble Gardens was part of that. So shout out to the ladies up in NorCal. But that's huge that you guys take. I want to say it's huge that you guys took your experience that you had from what they would say the corporate background, not necessarily something that's embedded in the cannabis industry. So I think it's important that people know people like yourself. Now, I know you guys host these events. Do you guys provide the services to other brands? I know a lot of people are kind of shifting from not so much sponsoring, just sponsoring events, just because the cannabis is a little bit tight for marketing, is what I'm hearing continuously from the different platforms. But is there opportunity for brands to reach out to you guys for those type of services, for branding parties or launch, like brand launching, like having a pre-roll line, and they want to just highlight this collaboration they have with these people? Is that something you guys can do as well?
Yes, I think that all of those things that you're saying are all products of the plan. I think a lot of the things that we like to do in the beginning is understand and listen to the brand about where they're at. A lot of brands, depending on where they're at, either financially or how much distribution they have or markets or targets they're going after, whatever, we need to like have products that are essentially customized for their plan. A lot of times we get involved in the planning phase. we're like, they're like, oh, we want to do this in this quarter or whatever. And we help them design a strategy related to their budget that makes sense for where they're at. A lot of times brands are not involved at this level at the planning. They're just kind of like buying products, hoping it'll work. It really makes a difference when we can get involved in the planning phase to help them buy the right products, essentially.
Yeah, and it's also about, and I think James boils it down to, it's really understanding the brands. So it might be as simple as, hey, we're trying to get involved in a couple of cool, this is our target markets, and we want to do smaller local events focused on these target markets. And we're like, great, we have a comedy show here, we have this kind of show here, we have this. Or, this happens with us as well. We want to showcase our, maybe a distro will come to us and they'll say, hey, we want to showcase our breadth of our brands, 5 or 6 of our brands, right, and highlight a bunch of bud. We're going to invite out a bunch of bud tenders, and we want to do a special night. We can do that too. We can create a specialty night for them to help focus on that. So for us, the most important thing is really getting to understand what the brand wants to do and who they're trying to target and how they want to do that. And then we fit them into our ecosystem. And that's another big piece about us, because we're kind of agnostic, if you would. We're not tied to any one specific event. We're not trying to get you just to our events. Right. We also have events that we work with. We work with, like, for example, WeHo Pride. We brought cannabis for the first time ever to WeHo Pride last year. Over 160,000 people. We brought 10 brands. First time ever. It was awesome. We worked with LA Magazine for the first time at their food and wine event. We brought cannabis to the food and wine event there as well. So not only we're doing Dre Day this year, which is a huge, amazing concert focused on that community and representing and celebrating Dre. It's really cool. So for us, it's not about, hey, let's get you to our Cannabis and Movies, or hey, it's really about, what is it you're trying to do? Who are you trying to talk to? Is it music goers? Is it movie people? Is it moms? Right? We have events that are focused on moms. That's why we try to create like cannabis and movie nights that might be focused on a specific group, like a up north women's event, right? And then we might have one that's a sun-grown event. And we might have one that's like all drinks, right? And it's a bunch of new drinks coming out. So it's really about starting to showcase the differences in cannabis and not always making it is all about one thing. Like, hey, it's about smoking flower and getting as high as you can. That's not true. Everybody uses it for different things.
Yep. 100%. And as a mom, I think that's becoming more relevant for me. I used to say the same. It's like, I'm purely, bongs and a flower person. Now I need something a little bit more discreet. So it's just changed. Everything's evolved just like our industry has. But I appreciate people like you who are dissecting into, really trying to figure out where you guys become of service to the community. And I think when you guys are taking that time, it's huge that you guys are helping them strategize, because I think branding and marketing, it's kind of a pendulum, and they do go back and forth, but not many people probably come with the weight of background that James comes with, and yourself, Rico. So being able to go to somebody like you guys and really making sure that their dollars are being where, it makes sense for them when it is a strapped industry. It's great to hear that you guys are out there. Obviously, you guys have had cannabis been part of your life since teenager time. I'm guessing cannabis has always been part of your life.
Definitely for me.
Okay. How about you, James?
When I was younger, definitely in high school and actually early college stuff. And then I wasn't, using anything for a really long time. And I really experienced cannabis kind of back when I got into funding, when I funded the dispensary. Before that, I didn't know that Prop 215 was around. I still thought cannabis was like highly illegal. When they said I could fund a dispensary in 2014, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what? So there was this huge sort of evolution for me after 2010, really kind of learning about the modern cannabis market, because my only experience was when I was younger.
Oh, mine was way later, actually. Even though I've been into cannabis since high school, I'm like, that's where I stopped, right? I knew bongs and J's, and that's about it. Even living in California, up until 2017, when I started really getting into the marketing of it, that's all I really knew. And then I got into the marketing side, and it just opened this huge door for me. And I think that's what really caught me about the cannabis industry, was that I realized it was so much more than getting high, right? Like, we have so many people that come to our events and they're looking to like fall asleep, right? They don't even want to get high. They're just like, man, I stress out because of this, that, and the other. And, I usually drink to go to bed, but it's been really affecting me. And it's that. So I'm looking for something else to help me fall asleep. They're not trying to get high. So it really opened this huge door to me in 2017 when I got out of the space of cannabis is there, just to smoke. Right. There's balms for, medical rubs and CBD, and now terpenes are becoming terpenes and the cannabinoids.
Yeah.
The general public is just barely starting to realize that these things exist. Right. And so we're going to start educating them on that. And that opens up a whole new world of CPG products and all kinds of different services that we can offer that, again, isn't really about getting high. And that's a different
and thing. I don't want to step over that either, that like, in Southern California, at least my experience, cannabis, but it just, for me, in my circles, it wasn't as prevalent as it would be in somewhere like NorCal. NorCal, because of the grower, history coming, from anywhere from the West Coast, right, anywhere from like north of San Francisco, that it's in the culture. Right. So when people are telling me they have 20 years experience sales and all these other things, it's because the culture was accepted up there. It wasn't necessarily down here in SoCal, not to my experience.
Yeah.
And so it's not just about like, moving into the CPG market with all the products. It's also about the acknowledgement of the legacy of cannabis in these particular markets and not stepping over that. These farmers really fought tooth and nail to keep the shit alive. And we're now taking it, to the next level. But really, it's not stepping over that legacy and really acknowledging that, because they have so much to teach us about culture, about the cannabis culture being ingrained in everyday life. It's not like that here in SoCal necessarily, but if you go to other countries, it is. I mean, look at Jamaica or like some of these. It's part of daily life. It is a ritual that people have in their life. That's kind of the experience I get from my NorCal peeps. It's part of the ritual of life. And I think that's one of the things that we will see emerge around, not only here in SoCal, but around the country as well. And I think marketers and brand people have to understand that like, it's not, we're pushing it all to medical. It's like, there is a culture there, a ritual that will be adopted as well along with this whole process.
I think that's a really unique thing that the cannabis industry has that I don't even know any other industry that really has this built-in culture already established for decades before it legally opens up to the consumer market, right? Like, you think about computers, there wasn't a built-in industry when computers went live. People were like, what is this new thing, right? So like this built-in culture, you can't let that go and you can't step that. You have to really understand that when you're starting to build this new path that cannabis is starting. But it's coming from the old path that they've already been blazing for just decades and decades and decades.
And one more note on that, the business developers and finance people, they also have to understand that this is part of the mechanism. They like to overlook this part, like it's all the future of CPG and that's the only market that exists, and they can rely on their experience in marketing and branding to like overcome the hurdles. That's just not the case. You cannot step over it. You have to understand the psychology of what's going on, where we're at. Also, the mechanics of propaganda against this industry since essentially Nixon. If you don't understand that the culture has been washed out and demonized, then you're not going to understand what is behind what people are thinking when you're introducing them to a new product. This is why we study these spaces, because in the space that we are studying, there is a lot of stuff. It's not just new products. It's not just all the fun. It's also the underlayers of propaganda, essentially psychological brainwashing that has been around for a long, particularly in the 80s and 90s. Like, you have to understand that this is what these people are dealing with. So you have to design the environment knowing that all that is there, and how do we overcome that? I think that's important for us to acknowledge as well.
Yeah, you hit a lot of points there. And like being part of the Emerald Cup for myself, I learned so much being around the people who are from NorCal. Like you said, there is a culture there. Trust is huge. It's really hard for them to just open the field to anyone, especially to tell their story. Most of these people grew up, their parents were growing already. And so when you're talking, for me, I'm 37, and their parents were growing and their parents were growing, it's land that they've owned. I can't imagine myself. It's like giving up a piece of your heart, your family, that you guys have put all your sweat and tears. And if you've grown, yourself that it is like your babies. There's so much love that we put into it. I don't know if it's just the cannabis industry. I'm sure people maybe who are in agriculture love what they do and what they produce. And it's not just flipping the buck for them. And I think that's important that you touched on that. So I appreciate you giving us insight on that and sharing a little bit of both of your guys' background. I think it's important. We know that you guys come with a lot of experience on both ends, as far as helping strategize a business and a brand in this particular industry. It's growing so rapidly. And so for me, having you guys on here, I think it's important so we have these open conversations to educate other people where to go to, who to lean on. I think you guys are a great resource. That's what we hope that we become here. So you guys are obviously a huge service to our community. I think you guys would say you guys are 50-50 as far as catering the network in the community, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Our events are talking mostly to consumers. That's really where most of our events focus. But for us, our service is trying to figure out how we create those connection points for the brand. So we serve both the community on their events and finding the connection points for the brands.
Yeah. Well, guys, we are up to time. You guys did amazing. I thank you guys for sharing your story. I appreciate your time. Time is money. So, when you guys are out here sharing everything that you guys have put into your guys' mission and what you guys provide to our community is a huge asset for myself and for other people in the community, especially if people are kind of curious, or maybe they come from outside industry, or maybe they're, out of college and they're interested about this industry and they just don't know where to start. So tell us more where we could learn about you guys and where we can support you guys.
Absolutely. Well, we have Emerald Market's main website, emeraldmarket.co. That's the main website where you can get in contact to us over all of our events. And then if you're interested specifically in cannabis and movies, we have cannabisandmovies.com. And so cannabisandmovies.com has scheduling for the regular upcoming events, as well as reach out for brands that are interested in participating in cannabisandmovies.com as well. And then our Instagram is just Cannabis and Movies. If you want to follow us there and hear about all the great new movies and events coming out.
You guys have one coming up?
Yes, we have. No. Borat is this Sunday.
I thought so. All right, guys, I appreciate it. That's all the time we have again. Thank you so much, Rico and James. Hope to have you guys back on, maybe, end of the year, see what you guys have going on. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Rich Soil Podcast. Peace.
Thank you.